Tony.
Hey, Jordan. What's up, man?
Not much. How you doing? So it's official.
Well.
We gave our test run last week. Had a few people join us for the stream, and it's official now. So here we are. This is the first official. I've been using that word. First official live stream in a very long time. I don't know if people remember. I mean, some people have been around since we started, but I don't know if people were around since we started. When we started Network Collective, live streaming was a big part of what we did. Like we live streamed the recording of the episodes, and then we found out that it's really hard to coordinate getting a time together that works for everybody. Which guess what? Still true, but we're gonna do it anyway. So anyway, I'm actually quite excited because we have a guest joining us for the first one, Brave Soul, who's willing to come on with us here. And it's Tim McConnaughy. So Tim, welcome. It is good to see you. It's good to I'm meeting you in person for the first time. Well, I mean, virtually in person, right? I guess it's not really in person. This is as close as in person gets to. So Tim, for myself, well, first off, welcome. I'm glad you're here. But for myself and everybody watching, why don't you give us a bit of a background? So what is it that you do? And maybe some of your history, and I don't know, like your favorite teacher in high school or something. I don't know. Don't do that. That's good for password questions.
Yeah. What street did I grow up on? Yeah.
Yeah. What's your dog's name? Mother's maiden name?
Yeah. Actually, just get out your pad and we'll just start writing them down.
Perfect.
So yeah, Tim McConnaughy. I am what's the official title is Technical Solutions Architect at Cisco.
That's a great title.
Very fancy, extremely fancy. Looks great on the resume.
It's my title.
Oh, right?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, we have that in common. Yeah. So day to day, I work for Cisco's Customer Proof of Concept Labs, or CPOC, which is it's a big lab. I'm a big lab rat. We build big labs there for customers who want to see product solutions, all of that kind of put through its paces. You know, here's a customer who's thinking about buying some solution. They want to see Cisco prove that it works, under their stringent requirements. And so we hack it together and take them through a test plan and just show them how their network would work. We call it test drive your network. So on the side, or I guess equally as much, I also work on Cisco's D Cloud, which is our demo cloud. So that's our virtual demonstration platform. So I make demos there. God, I hate talking about myself. My focus is enterprise networking. So I do SD-WAN, SDA, route switch, all that good stuff, right? Let's see, what street did I grow up on?
You really don't have to say that. That's really cool. So CPOC. I've known some people who've worked in CPOC. Some rather popular, famous people in the networking community who work in CPOC. And it seems like a really fun job. It seems like, I'm sure like every job has its negatives. So I'm not trying to say that it's, the absolute be all and end all, but I think that being able to work in different environments, it's one of the things that that appeals to me as working as a VAR, is I get to walk into a bunch of different places, deal with a bunch of different circumstances. And I feel like CPOC would be the same way with, a bit more creativity, I think. Like you don't have the restrictions that come with your typical enterprise network because it's all just lab work, right? Like you can go make it happen, right? Like you still have to live within constraints, but it seems like a really cool environment to work in. How long have you been doing that?
So I've been with CPOC for about 2 years now. Before that, I worked with AS. Well, sorry, I guess it's Cisco CX now, the customer experience, but before it was called Advanced Services, right? So I'm sure you've been in the industry long enough to know that anyway. But
yeah, for sure.
So for the new guys. So I was a network consulting engineer there. But yeah, I mean, you're right. CPOC is a lot of fun. We actually get a lot of different customers coming through with a lot of different designs, a lot of different stuff. We get partners as well, actually. So we have VARs that come in with customers that want to show the solution as well. It's really cool, right, to be a lab rat. So you don't have every job has anxiety, but it's not the same anxiety. So we do our work in sprints. So say, from once we start the sprint, it's like a week to build out the lab, to cable, rack, stack, and everything, put versions on stuff. a week to configure it all and run through a test plan that the customer wants to see. And then we have a week with the customer to play, basically, to show them, hey, this works, and also what would you like to see? So it's high stress, but it's also high reward. And at least it's not a true enterprise network where we're worried about blowing everything up every time we try something new.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I want to jump in and ask a question, because I've never been one of those guys who had that dream of like working for Cisco. A lot of people sort of in our networking space sort of have that path, that trajectory, right? Because Cisco might be one of the, maybe is the biggest player out there. But I never have. But I always thought, like, if I was going to work for Cisco or at Cisco, it would have to be at CPOC. Like that just calls to me. I feel like, you're given like a rack of gear and a rap sheet of requirements. And it's like, I need you to build this out of this by next week. Like, okay, let's make it happen. Let's do it. And then the week after that, you do that for a customer. Week after that, start over again. So it kind of, is that the flow? I mean, is that really what it's like? Because that seems like the dream to me.
Yeah. I mean, again, high stress, because you're trying to deliver everything in a very short period of time. But yeah, I mean, what you say is true, right? I believe you guys have had Fish on here before, right? You guys have had at some point?
Oh, yeah.
I am pretty decent friends with Fish. So she's been quiet lately. In fact, I was just talking to someone the other day about needing to reach out. So Fish, if you're watching or listening or somehow you get this, I'm thinking about you, but if not, I'm going to send you a message here in the near future.
So little known fact, when we were actually in the office, Fish and I were desk mates. Like, I sat right behind her. We've known each other since before I joined CPOC.
That had to be an adventure.
But yeah.
That had to be an
Fish's
adventure.
Desk mate,
yeah.
It's an adventure.
Yes.
It's great, right? And Fish, and Fish is awesome. And, we could do a whole show just about how awesome Fish is and start, although she would not appreciate that.
No, that's not what she's looking for sure.
That's not what she's looking for. But the point is she's awesome, right? And being her desk mate was awesome. And she's helped me a lot with my career as well. She's
that's
helped
no surprise.
Mentor me and everything. And that's just the kind of person she is, right? And so when I think of CPOC, that's who I think of. And it's true, right? So to answer your question, Tony, yeah, I mean, when you say, like, are you living the dream, essentially? Kind of, right? I mean, there's definitely some stress involved, when you hit bugs or I'm sorry, I said the B word. Cisco doesn't have those.
Excuse me.
They were enhanced features.
As someone who has implemented Cisco products for many, 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 many years, I beg to differ.
Oh no, I got my start in enterprise.
They're customer discovered features.
Yeah. And I mean, I worked for advanced services too, right? So I lived that bug life as well.
Probably more than most, because I find that advanced services gets called in before tech really becomes really pervasively known. I feel like advanced services, like, that's where the bleeding edge sits to start, because they have the best access to material before it becomes widespread. Okay, this is fantastic. I have to share this. But yeah, I have to share this. So this is Cisco doesn't have bugs. Citation needed.
I'll get back to you on that one.
Oh man!
No, we hit bugs in the lab all the time. I mean, I'd be remiss, right, to try to paint a different picture for you, right? Obviously, we're dealing with bleeding edge tech, like you said, not only in advanced services, but especially in CPOC. Right?
Of course,
CPOC is a pre-sales type of thing. So of course we're hitting bleeding edge stuff, and we're hitting bugs, I won't say all the time, but certainly enough, right? And when you're already 10 hours behind where you should be, 5 tasks behind where you should be, and you hit something, a showstopper, obviously that's raises the blood pressure a little bit. But, that's not different for, a person in production and enterprise doing it. I mean, that's where I got my start, was NOC and then enterprise. So I'm familiar with that anxiety as well, right?
So what does I mean, this is CPOC is customer proof of concept lab, right? So what does it take for a customer to have Cisco build out a proof of concept for them? I imagine that's not for every customer for Cisco to be able to put those kind of resources and time into it. I mean, what does it take? I mean, if I'm just, doing an enterprise refresh, I don't need you guys to lab it up, but would you? Like where do you guys draw the line on what needs a proof of concept and what doesn't?
That's a fair question. I will say that CPOC, like we, the CPOC organization, don't answer that question. Like we don't drive that question for customers or for account teams. But it usually comes down to, and Fish always puts it better than anybody, right? It comes down to FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? That's why CPOC exists, right? The CPOC exists because somewhere there's a customer who wants to believe in something, or maybe they don't want to believe in something, and they just need to see it. They need to see it work. They need to know that it can meet their needs. And that's the whole point of a CPOC, right? Is a customer has some kind of checklist or list of fear, uncertainty, doubt they want to have erased. And that's what we're there to do is kind of mock it up for them in a lab, in a safe environment, and just let them play and show that it can do what they want it to do, basically. Mm-hmm. As far as how they do it's something they work out with the account teams. I actually don't have a lot of visibility on that, if you want to be honest. By the time it comes to me, it's usually all packaged up for me, right?
Here's your work. Yeah, like the decision making. Yeah, no, fair enough.
And my other question for you is, right? I know Fish works at CPOC. I know you work at CPOC. How big is the team there? I mean, how many people actually work in there? How many labs are going on at once? I mean, I only know of you two, right? Because you're in my visibility, but who else, and how big is the team?
Not as big as I would like, put it that way. So we have a few CPOCs around the world, right? We have one in San Jose. We have one here in RTP.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'm in RTP.
That's cool.
Yeah, we have, it just reopened, the one in San Jose. We have one in Bangalore. We have one in APJ, and then we have one in Sydney, Australia. In London. God, they're going to kill me when forgot about London. But spread over that entire footprint, I would say, different CPOCs have different amount of people. I'm for the Americas, I'm the only EN CPOC engineer. But we have 2 data center guys in RTP. We have a couple data center guys in San Jose. And then it's different around the world. It's just a smattering around the world. When we talk about things like, running on a skeleton crew, I like to joke that we're running on a pirate skeleton crew because we're missing a leg. But that's just the way it is.
Wow. Okay. Just like every team, right? Everyone needs more people. Every industry needs more people.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm so excited that, every day it seems like we get more and more people joining the industry, right? Which is awesome. Yeah.
I think, it's hard to, it will be hard to, I think, ever ignore Cisco with the size and momentum that they have. But it's because of Cisco that we have like a huge amount of folks in this industry. If it wasn't for Cisco, I wouldn't have got my start. I don't think I wouldn't have been down the same path, and especially I think with the new certifications, all the DevNet stuff, that is, I think those are the newest ones available, has really brought in sort of a new wave of interest, right? A whole bunch of new folks who maybe were interested in coding and maybe not so much networking, are now being able to have more opportunities. Now they're be able to get jobs and certifications, in backgrounds of coding, supporting networks. And that wasn't available previously. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really awesome. And we're constantly getting new waves of engineers. And I can't wait to see, what is going to be the next wave? And when's that going to come? Is it going to be 10 years down the road? Is there going to be a new technology, a new sort of wave of certifications? What's going to bring more people into the networking industry? I wonder what that's going to be.
No, I totally agree with pretty much everything you just said. Actually, it's a funny story. I'm actually sitting for I say sitting. I'm doing the Pearson Online. This is my first time doing a Pearson Online test for the DevNet Associate tomorrow. So we'll see, hopefully knock on wood, right? I can knock that out. But I can say, even if I fail, thank you. Even if I fail it, though, I will not. Obviously, I'll end up studying more and taking it again, right? Like my goal is to actually get the certification. But dude, just the eyes open to the stuff that's out there, that's newer, that I honestly have probably been setting to the side for a good long time now, and that has continued to develop and continues to develop around us, is awesome, right? Like just the whole APIs thing with all the different products, and I know, God, I never realized we had so many different products with so many different APIs. Of course, that makes sense. Being Cisco, right? We tend to acquire certain stuff and then kind of make it work, right? But that's why I'm also excited about things like Intersight and some of the new products we're putting together to kind of orchestrate a little bit of that together. But anyway, yeah, I'm really excited. I'm hoping I get it. But even if I don't get it, I'm already thinking like, how can I bring some of this into CPOC to make my life easier, make everybody's life a little easier, because we're constantly tearing down and building labs, and there's definitely some room there to bring in some network automation to help us do that.
So, I mean, I think this is a great topic, because I think that you work in CPOC introduces you to a lot of technology pretty quickly. And being introduced to that lot of technology quickly, I know this is true to some degree in the same way like working at a reseller or integrator, that you get introduced to a lot as well. And I think that there's even a lot of pressure on people who work in the enterprise or service provider, that there's a learning treadmill, like this idea that there's constantly something new that has to be learning. Like we our industry is a bit unique in that, always be labbing, always be learning. There's like this outward pressure to always continue to learn and develop. Not all industries are that way. And so I think it would be interesting to hear how you think about that just in general, but also how you work through that yourself, because I think you're kind of on the front end of the spear there when it comes to things that you have to learn rapidly.
Yeah. Well, let me. Okay, so and let me know if I say ramble because I'm very self-deprecating that way, but I'm also very extroverted, so I tend to talk quite a bit. And I remember the memes from the beginning of 2020. They're all like, check on your extroverted friends; they're not okay, and that's absolutely true for me. So stop me, because I do have strong feelings about this topic. And I'll probably just go like forever if you let me.
Go for it. That's the reason why we have you here. Go for it.
So, all right. So my personal feelings about this. Let me start by just telling you how I got my start with CPOC. So when I got this job, when I interviewed and got the job, they were like, day one, they were like, how are you with SD-WAN? And I was like, I'll be completely honest with you. I just got my route switch CCIE. I just pretty much just gotten it with like a month or two, a couple months beforehand. I'm coming off of that high. I haven't had any time to dig my head into SD-WAN yet. And they're like, well, if we bring you over, you have to be the SD-WAN expert for us. And I said, okay, cool. Sounds fun. I wanted to learn it anyway. So there I started. And so they were like, here's your first project. Your first project, by the way, is to create the new version of the dcloud demo for all our SD-WAN content. I'm like, cool. How do you dcloud? And they're like, that's a great question. Now, go ahead and figure it out. So I had to figure out a lot of that on my own. The point is, you talk about hit the ground running, right? You hit the ground running every day, and we all do, right? But the point is that was, so I'm not only learning SD-WAN, I'm also learning how to build stuff in dcloud at the same time. And then I'm learning how to do CPOCs at the same time. And, I was actually pivoting. I was going to do my Linux certification, the LPIC 1, I think is what I was going for. And I had to stop because we needed an SDA expert. So I'm an enterprise networking TSA. That's my thing. So I had to set aside like the other stuff I was working on just so I could focus on SDA, because we did not have CPOC, didn't have anybody who we had, I won't say we don't have anybody that knew it. So my friend Dustin Schumann, he's a architect with our group as well. And he knew SDA. He knew SD-WAN much better than I did. And we're good friends. Actually, point is, he was an architect, so he was busy. He was like architect above architects. So he was busy with other projects. So I needed to be the CPOC delivery engineer who was good at SDA. So I had to put everything on hold and just, go full steam at SDA, which is, obviously it's not a small topic. And it's just like that, right? So it is a treadmill. What you say is true. And, tip of the spear, as it were, yeah, that's what we're always doing. There's new SD-WAN features coming out. There's new SDA features coming out. and there's new CPOCs coming all the time that want to see all of them with their customers. So the point is that, yeah, you're never done learning, and that's good and it's bad, right? It's good because it means that you can continue to grow, you can continue to be interested. Because I don't know about you guys, but if I learn all there is to learn, I'm already looking for the next thing, right? You know, somewhere else, doing something different. As long as I'm interested, I'm engaged. But it's also bad, right? Because what it means is that, and I think everybody in this industry is probably has a little bit of anxiety in general, or at least we tend to be a little high strung. And maybe that's a blanket statement, but I know that's true for me. You know, there's the need to keep pushing forward. And, you know, like, if I don't, what happens if I don't? You know, am I going to be left behind? Am I going to be obsolete tomorrow? And we talk about things like DevNet, and I know that the pressure is on people to pick up all of these new technologies and just remain relevant. You know what I mean? And so, you know, I know, Tony, I know you have kids. I don't know, Jordan, if you have kids or not, but
oh yeah.
Okay. So yeah. You know how it is, right? When you're sitting there and you've got this weight crushing you about, I need to learn this and I need to have it ready. I need to know it for my job. And this is where I need to spend my time, just to make sure that, you know, I don't get fired or something. And some of that's probably in your head, right? But, you know, your kids come looking to play. They want to go outside. They want to spend time with you. And you're just like, and you're doing the mental calculations. I don't know if you guys do this, but like, you're doing the mental calculations. All right, when was the last time I said yes to this? Like, and how much time do I have if I go out? And how much time do I have to assimilate? You know, how much time do I have left on the calendar before I have to deliver a CPOC on this technology? And I need to know it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm doing like some mental arithmetic there, and I feel like such a jerk for it, right? Like, you know, they're coming to you wanting to spend time with you, and you're sitting there doing a risk analysis. It's horrible. Like, I don't know. And again,
this is one of the failings of our industry. I mean, in my mind, this is one of the failings of our industry. And it's there's no finger to point at somebody, right? But for some reason, the culture has developed in such a way that the expectation is that you're going to learn absolutely everything about how to do your job off your job. The idea is, when you're on your job, you're doing work, whatever work is. And that when you go home, that's how you learn to do the next work, like whatever the next thing is going to be. Now, it's a two-edged sword, because it's an industry where there's a ton of amount of growth potential. If you do put in the work at home, there's a payoff for it. I think about, like, when I did my CCIE studies, like, that was a massive amount of effort, but at the end, there was a massive amount of difference that it made in my career. I think about when I've spent the time and really dug in to do something, it tends to have an effect. But in the same time, like, when you think about, I don't know, like, take any trade, right? Where there's a whole journeyman through expert, you know, progression through going, but their industries don't change like every nanosecond like ours do.
Exactly.
And I think that's the big challenge, is that, you know, I think that employers are not used to the idea, unless they're a technology focused company, unless that's their job and then what they do. They're not used to the idea that part of doing your job is learning the next thing. And like, that should be something that happens on hours. Like, that's something they're paying you to do, is to stay up on this stuff. And we, as practitioners, have made it acceptable that we have to do it. So, I mean, I think that the responsibility is on both sides for this. And I think that, you know, we need to start nudging it back. Like, it's not going to be something we solve overnight. But one of the things that I'm a big stalwart on is that you need to set boundaries, for the very reason that you said, Tim. I've got a family, I've got kids. If I make a decision, it's my decision, and it's based on an ROI, right? Like, the ROI is, is my family going to benefit from this time that I'm spending away from them? And then when I make that, I don't make that in a vacuum. I talk to my wife, I talk to my kids. I mean, they don't make the decision, but like, if I'm going to make a big commitment to learning something new, like, they're going to know, hey, I'm stepping away for a little bit. I'm not going to be as present. And here's why. Maybe they understand it. Maybe they don't. I don't know yet. And I don't know that I'm doing it right. But what I do know is that every time when I start taking away from, you know, my 40, and I'll even give it grace to say 50-hour work week, you know, like, in that, I think that that's pretty normal. But if it goes above and beyond that, I start making decisions for myself. And sometimes you just have to say no. And it's one of those things that it's uncomfortable and it leads to conversations that are a little tough, especially if you work at other places that other people don't say no. I've seen that a lot too, where there's like this culture in specific companies where like it is just the expectation that you work 70, 80 hours a week. That's not healthy. Like you do need to have some separation. And I say that as somebody who has a second job that's in the same industry as my first job running this podcast, right? Working usually 70, 80 hours. But this thing with Network Collective is a passion of mine. It's different. Yeah. I don't get paid a lot for it. And ultimately what I'm doing is I'm very interested in the idea of building community and helping engineers out. And so like, that's why this exists. And so it's almost, and not to put myself up on any sort of pedestal, but it's a very altruistic effort. Like it's an idea, like I want to do this because it makes me feel good to do it. Not because it's work, but it's still a lot of work. I'm still working a lot, but I still think there's a lot of value there. But there's just this idea of finding balance and making decisions for yourself. I think it's really, really important. You have to be intentional about it. And I think there are seasons. I think that when you're younger and you don't have as many commitments, man, pour the hours in and get really good at what you do. When you start having other commitments, you got to find that balance. You just have to. And the thing is most employers, and this isn't a person thing, this is just general, like, welcome to capitalism. They'll take as much as you'll give, right? Like they'll take as much as you'll give. And so if you're willing to do it and you keep doing it, well, that's just going to become the expectations. If you set healthy boundaries and explain why you're setting those boundaries, explain how you're still working hard to meet the needs of the company, but you also still need that time outside, that conversation's never gone poorly for me. I'm not saying it won't go poorly sometimes. It will go poorly sometimes because there are jerks out there who are just trying to take advantage of you. But for the most part, people are people. Like your bosses generally are human beings who understand. They want to go home at the end of the day too. And, you know, like they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And so I think that this really is a challenge in our industry. This idea of constantly having to learn, but never being given the time to do it or the resources. Training budgets are like, sure, we'll send you to one conference every 3 years. Okay, well that means that I get to, you know, dip my toe into what is happening in the transition of technology and just the basics. And by the next time I make it, I'll learn the next generation of whatever's happening. So it's all
different. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit frustrating. And so like I'm, you know, you brought this up. Like, I know that this is one of those topics, like you brought it up as something you wanted to talk about. I'm really glad you did, because this is one of my soapboxes. You need to define your time, but at the same time, you need to make some assessments about where spending extra time might help you. Because as someone who has invested a lot of time into getting better at what I do, a lot of that was on my own time, and I don't regret any of it, right? There's just a balance. It has to be for you. It can't be just blindly for your employer. You have to be getting something from it.
Oh, that's absolutely true. 100%, man. Like if you don't get anything out of it, that's true. Tony, you're pretty quiet over there. What do you?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pointing the finger at Tony.
Yeah. Well, you guys have been going pretty heavy on this, so I didn't want to interrupt. No, but I definitely feel what both of you guys are saying, and I think my opinion shares some parallels, but also differs in some moments. One of them is I feel that moment you were talking about, Tim, where your kids come up to you and they want to play, they want to be part of your day, and you just go, "Daddy's studying. You know, we'll have to do this on the weekend." For me, it was a huge, heavy guilt. But that doesn't last forever. Okay. And I know, you know, it's a double-edged sword. Okay. Your kids are only kids once. All right. So you're going to miss out on some moments by putting a lot of effort into pursuing higher certifications. But it's not forever, you know, and it should be okay for you to do that for a period of time. For my family, it was pretty hard. My CCI studies went longer than I intended them to go. And I spent a lot of time, and we just built a workflow in my family where I spent a little bit of time, I mean, just a little bit of time with the kids and the wife after work before I would start my studies. And like 7 p.m., I would study till 10 p.m., 11 p.m., midnight, 2, 3 in the morning. It all depended on what I was working on. But that was my time. And it's very important to have these talks with your family. Otherwise, you're going to have some very harder conversations with your family about how much time you're spending not with them. So it is very challenging. It is very difficult. But one of the things, and you guys remember that every time I took the CCIE exam and I got my results, I brought my kids in to read them. And I didn't just do that for that moment. My kids were also sort of part of my entire journey. They would sometimes make me snacks and bring them into me for studying. So I tried to incorporate them as part of that entire process here in my family, so that when I was successful, when I finally did pass, they felt that as well. They felt that they contributed. It was part of the family. You know, it wasn't just me. It wasn't for my employer, that it was part of the whole family, and we all did this together, all by putting in our time. So that's one of the reasons why I did that. And I recommend anyone who's going for those higher certifications who feels like they're sort of like shunning their family for a little bit. You have to do that to focus, but bring them in. Invite them to come in, say, come look what daddy's doing, you know, come bang on the computer a little bit. You know, just give yourself a 10-minute break and teach them one thing on the computer. It was super valuable for my son. He wanted to hang out with me. And so we did like our first EVE-NG lab together. You know, he was 9 years old at the time, I think. And he did like a Cisco static routing lab. It was super cool. It was like, I felt like dad of the year at that moment. And another thing, Jordan, that you brought up, youth. I am now a bit older than I was, you know, when I started my CCIE journey. I then could much more comfortably stay up until midnight, 1, 2 in the morning. This being just a few years later, like when we're done with this stream, I'm going to be exhausted and I'm going to go to bed. I don't think I have like another CCIE in me at that same schedule with that same level of effort. But when you're a little bit younger, you do have that. There's more fire. There's more drive to stay up. You know, as we start to get, you know, through our mid-30s and more, we start realizing that, you know, we don't have to stay up till 2 in the morning. To remain relevant, to remain on the front line of technology. We don't have to do that. So youthfulness plays a role into it, definitely, in everyone's sort of drive for that, I think.
I think roles shift too. Like as we mature and become more senior, right? It's less about those nitty-gritty details. It's more about broader architecture questions. I'm speaking very generically here. CCIE is an exception to this, right? Like CCIE tends to be late mid career that people go after CCIE. Some people, you know, younger if they're super ambitious. But the idea is, you know, you're usually not going after it until you have 10 or 15 years experience. I mean, that's pretty typical. And so like you go and you go and you do that. And then I feel like you get to the end of that and it's kind of like, okay, you know, like my job is all architecture now. Like my job is to help people understand it. I understand it at a deep level. And I continue to try to understand it at a deep level, but like I'm okay letting the esoteric command line specifics go. Like I'm okay with that. Like, you know, like I can go look that up and I'm comfortable with that. Or when I was younger, that wasn't the case because I was living on a CLI. Not so much anymore. Now I'm actually living in front of a Python interpreter, right? Like I mean, I guess it's changed. It's not really all that different. But the idea being that, you know, I think as we get older, it's not just age. I think our roles change as we mature as engineers as well. Like as a junior engineer, it's all about hands on keyboard. It's all about getting something done. As a senior engineer or an architect, it's more about making good decisions and it's understanding where those faults are and where things are. And Tim, you kind of sit in an interesting position because you kind of sit in the middle. With the CPOC because of the fact that like you're responsible for making those broad decisions and making good decisions about architecture, but then you have to actually make it all work. You know, like you are the hands-on keyboard. There's no junior lackey you get to hand it off to go make it happen. So maybe not applicable to everybody, and maybe I'm just sharing my own story.
Oh no, I mean we have college co-ops, which is a good program for them and a good program for us. So we bring in people who are basically pursuing IT degrees or networking degrees, and we give them the ability to help us rack stack, configure some small, you know, some parts of the lab. So, you know, I'm not racking, stacking, cabling anymore at my point in the career. We have co-ops who do that, who are learning, and that's good for them at their level of what they're learning, right? So we talk about different roles and stuff. But you're right. I do straddle that. CPOC specifically, and to some degree dcloud, depending on what the technology is and what the demo is, straddles that a little bit. And from a design perspective, I wish one thing I miss actually about working for advanced services or CX now, whatever. I'll probably never call it CX first. One thing I miss, I was a consulting engineer to some really big companies, and we made designs together. Like that was the level that I worked at with these companies. Was we worked on design. They have projects, they want solutions, and we worked at that level of architecture. And I don't get to work there so much anymore, because usually what's delivered to me is a diagram. Now I might have some, hey, this is really a bad idea for this customer should think about this, or this will be a really weird way to do this solution, or something like that. Like I have input into the process, but ultimately it's whatever the customer wants to see from an architecture perspective, right? So I could give my feedback, but I don't make those decisions in CPOC. So that's one thing I miss actually from AS, because I love design. Design is like, I don't know why I haven't gone for a CCDE yet, except that I think Tony touched on a little bit. I'm maybe getting a little too old to get another IE level cert. I don't know. And maybe the ROI is not there for me, since I've already taken, so much of my, I mean, honestly, if we're being honest, I got my IE actually probably much faster than some, so I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that, for almost a full year of my life, I was gone. Right. So, anyway, point is, I don't know. I love design, actually. I do wish I got to do a little bit more of it in CPOC. I do get to do more of it on the dcloud side, where we're talking about demonstrating solutions rather than building what the customer wants to see. But yeah, so
having spent some time, having spent some time building labs recently, it's amazing how much design work goes into building a lab, because it's not just demonstrating the technology, it's building all the underlying supporting components to make that demo work. The stuff that the person using the demo never sees. The stuff that sits under, and so the architecture that's involved is more than just the architecture of the solution or whatever it is you're trying to demo. You then also have the automation orchestration architecture, and you have where different components live, and there's almost like 2 or 3 designs that go into building a lab versus when you build it in the real world. And then there's always the shortcuts, the things like, oh, I don't have that, or I have this one box and it needs to represent 27. How do I make that happen?
Well, so you see fun things too that you don't deal with in regular networks. Like, okay, well, I need to demonstrate latency. Like, what's the coolest tool? What's the tool that I need to build into this topology so I can generate latency, or I can generate traffic, or I can, make something happen that's not normal that you would normally, see, so to make some test case, right? So there's different. You're right. I guess it's not like a lack of design or architecture. It's just different now than it would be from working directly with customers on their specific designs. So yeah.
So there's a question here. I want to drop in here, Tony.
Oh, go ahead, George.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Farid came in. It's just a YouTube comment. Says, love to hear some of the scale of CPOC. So what's the largest WAN related project Tim has been involved in? And Tim, do you work on the solution validation testing side as well?
I do not work for. We have a solution validation service. It's called SVS. That's actually through CX, and that's like a contract thing where you can do it onesie twosie, or you can have a subscription. So really big customers will actually buy a subscription to SVS, and SVS will build their network. They're everything to the T, build their network, and they can run whatever tests they want. They can test migrations, upgrades. They can test whatever they want, and it's exactly the same as it's a mirror image of their network. With the proof of concept lab, we're generally trying to focus on a test plan, a specific set of scenario use cases that the customer wants to see. So we're not going to build a one-for-one necessarily, unless unless there's a specific architectural consideration for the customer. First question, though, about the scale of CPOC and the largest WAN-related project I've been involved in. On my YouTube channel, actually, I have several CPOCs I've been involved with. I've done some, I've anonymized all the data, of course, right? But I do CPOC walkthroughs of some of my more interesting CPOCs on my YouTube channel. So you can go over there. I guess we'll I don't know, sure how to pop it up there.
We'll find a way to share a link. One way or another, we'll get a link out there.
I'll put the link in the chat.
Okay, you put the link in the chat, and then Tony, if we can send it out on social as well, just because there won't be necessarily a video for this component that's going to go out. I think it'd be good if you've got good content out there. We always love to share good content. I actually have a question for you. It's a bit of a joke of a question, but it's still a question. And the question is, what is your least favorite technology to work with in CPOC, and why is it IWAN?
Why is it? Oh man, I missed the IWAN train. So, I told you I've been for 2 years now. I actually barely missed the IWAN train.
Yeah, you said you came in and they were talking about SD-WAN. Fish did a ton on IWAN. I will say that of everybody I've ever met, Fish is the only one who actually understands IWAN. It's fantastic. Like if you needed an IWAN question answered, I would go to Fish. Yeah,
her and David Prohl were like the two people who knew IWAN, right? The 10,000 page book that was IWAN. So IWAN was what it was, right? Like it was a
I don't mean to pick on it too much. I actually work with a bunch of the guys who were responsible for IWAN now. And so it's a little bit of an inside thing too, just because I give them a hard time, because I was not a huge fan of IWAN, and I never really was. I thought IWAN was kind of it was Cisco's first foray, right? Like everyone was doing SD-WAN, and Cisco did what Cisco always does, which sometimes works. And that is, we already do all of those things. Let's just bring them all together and build a package around it and make it go. But it didn't quite make it go. Is my biggest complaint.
I would agree with that. I would agree that IWAN was. I'm trying to think what other SD-WAN that you would actually call SD-WAN existed before IWAN that you would say like, hey, here's the rubber stamp. That's an SD-WAN solution.
It depends. It depends on how you measure it. So when you think about SD-WAN, SD-WAN has a lot of core components that have always existed. What hasn't really existed traditionally is the controller. It's the orchestration piece. Right. We've had BFD, we've had tunnels, it's routing relationships, we've had VRFs, we've had MPLS layer 3 VPN. Like we've had all of these technologies that can do all of the things that happen in SD-WAN. But the reason why SD-WAN is catching as much as it has and continues to is because of the fact that a lot of those technologies became very hard to consume. If you're a typical enterprise engineer who has to learn a bunch of these things, orchestrating these things at scale, doing something like PFR, or doing something like
any kind of performance routing is a pain.
When you get into performance routing, or you do application-based routing, like that falls apart when you get beyond 2 or 3 routers. Like it's really easy to do that, policy-based routing when it's just 2 routers and I'm coordinating that. Try to do it with 15 and, like you're going to want to quit. And so like the orchestrator's the big piece. And so other people were doing WAN feature orchestration before Cisco did. Right. And so like there were some people who beat them to the punch. Viptela was out there. Silver Peak was out there. A lot of the VMware, VelaCloud at the time, right, was out there. Like those guys were out there and they were putting together a product, and it wasn't as robust as the routing features that Cisco had because they were still building their product up. But it was controller based and it was much easier to consume. And so
it was more turnkey.
So you're right. So when Cisco said, "Hey, we've got all those features, we'll add a controller," and they just added it as a feature on a router, right? They just added it as a feature on a router, and completely missed the whole idea of like visibility and some of the other components you get with that controller.
Ease of use.
And ease of use. So they checked the box, right? They checked the box, but it really was not an easily consumable technology. When you have to add, live action, to be able to know where your traffic was actually going. Yeah. Like that was
terrible.
Yeah. Right. And so clearly Cisco recognizes all of this because they went out and they spent a whole heck of a lot of money buying a Viptela because they knew that was really what they needed. But you couldn't tell them that at the time. If you tried to bring up if you tried to bring up the fact that IWAN was somehow less than anything else, man, you got smacked down pretty hard. And it was a little frustrating because it was, and I think that's probably why the sour taste, not because it was bad. It has this place and it works. We still have customers that are running it, and so it's out there and it works, but it was really hard to consume, and it was only slightly easier than putting it all together yourself, right? Right.
look at the book. Then go no further than the book. Our competition would take the IWAN book into their customers and be like, "You want to implement this?"
Yeah.
Slap it down on the table, like, you want to implement this?
We have another
absolutely
question about CPOC here. It says, do you guys have like a CPOC in a box, sets of designs and configs you can pull together when needed, or is it more based on each individual customer?
That's a good question. So what we have multiple offerings, and I didn't necessarily want this whole thing to be focused on CPOC, but I think it's very cool that people are interested in CPOC, want to hear more about it.
We'll move on here shortly. We'll talk about CPOC for a while, yeah. But we'll move on.
I don't want to it's the CPOC show. That wasn't. Anyway, so let me answer your question though, because it's a good question. So we have what are called pre-built static test kits, where we cobbled together. We put together a set of use cases, and it just kind of sits there, right? And we wipe the configs, we load the configs, and we run through the pre-built test plan with customers, right? So if a customer really wants to see something in action, and this maybe is one of their earlier touches on it, they don't really understand it, but they'd love to see it demonstrated. That's what that pre-built static test kit is for. Now, a custom CPOC, that's what I do. Custom is custom, right? Custom is go through the entire process, submit a diagram, submit a test plan, and get an engineer to help you build and demonstrate it. So there are different levels of that, right? Different levels of effort, different levels of all of that, right?
Sure. So I want to take the conversation kind of back where we were talking about learning. And I think that there's a corollary here to this idea of the learning treadmill and constantly going after, new ideas. And that is, we have a pretty prevalent case. I don't know if it's a single case, it's many cases, right, of imposter syndrome. And like imposter syndrome is something we talk about a lot. I don't think it's unique to what we do, but I think that it gets amplified because of this whole learning treadmill thing and the fact that there's always something that you don't know very well, and there's always someone out very publicly demonstrating their competence in that thing, right? And so it's hard, right? And so I'm curious, what's your take on that in and around the idea of the learning treadmill, and what's your take on imposter syndrome? I mean, is it legit? There are people out there who would say it's not. And then, how, if you do think it's legit, how do you compensate for it? How do you work through it? Whenever you're feeling like, you're less than or whatever.
Yeah. I just want to jump in here and say that, it is hard following Nick Russo in anything. So, I mean, when you say there's someone out there who's better than you in something, well, Nick's like doing everything, and he's like very public about his education that he's providing and his courses and stuff. But I feel like there's not a lot of unique material left. By the time Nick finishes his career, he will have written expert level books on every topic everything out there that's applicable in this industry. And it's like he's a hard act to follow.
So I'm probably gonna jump the gun here a little bit, and I might even start delving into the deal with it side. But let me share my thoughts on Nick. Now, first off, I have the privilege of seeing Nick both, what he does publicly, and he's in the Network Collective Slack. He worked with us. I think some of the first stuff he did publicly was through Network Collective. And so, like, I've known Nick for a while now, and he is probably one of the most impressive engineers I have ever met. There's maybe 1, 2, 3 other people that sit on the plane of like active engineers today of where Nick Russo is at. It is really, really impressive. But I also know what he does to make that happen. And back to our conversation about the learning treadmill, I don't want it. Like, I mean, just to be blunt about it, I don't want it. Like, it's great, and I can't be any more grateful and appreciative for the fact that there are people like Nick Russo in the world. I'd put Russ White in this category as well, because I've had a chance to work with him as well. They are tireless, and they are super disciplined. And I think, I mean, just in my own personal perspective, if I were to try to do what they would do, I would forego a lot of the things I love about life. And I just don't, I mean, I'm trying to say it as nicely as I can, but like I would be doing this all the time. Nick Russo is one of the most disciplined people I have ever met, and he doesn't. Yeah. I think he's still looking for ways to be more disciplined than what he is right now. I think he still thinks that there's room to grow. And I look at him and say, I don't even want to aspire to the level of discipline that he has. It is impressive. But I like, for me personally, and everyone has to make their own value decisions, I'm not interested. As somebody who puts a lot of time into extraneous stuff for the network community and creating content, like I'm just, it's so much effort, and it's so consuming that I just don't know. And I think that's my rationalization too about why I'm not Nick Russo. But but at the same time, I think that everything in life is trade-offs. And sometimes it's okay to make the trade-off and say, I want to play the video game and spend some time with my family. Like, I don't do it a lot.
Like 4 hours in a day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. So sorry, I didn't mean to completely steal any thunder you might have had, or if you want to disagree,
No, you're fine. You make a good point, actually, Jordan. First of all, Nick and I have known each other for a long time as well. We're in a study group together. We're in Router Gods together. We've been in there for a long time. That's how I met Nick, actually. And before I met him at in Orlando in 2018, I think it was, in person. But we'd been he hangs out in the CCIE study group on there. And when I was studying for my CCIE, he was one of the people that hung out on that channel. And so, yeah, we've talked. We know each other pretty well. And I would agree with everything you said without restating it, right? The good and the bad, right? Like I made my peace with that part of it a long time ago, that, if I want to be Nick Russo, I need to put in the work like Nick Russo. And I'm not at a point in my life where I'm ready, willing, and able to do that anymore, probably. So I'm just making my peace with it. But as far as like imposter syndrome, and I think what Tony was saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like, you look at somebody like Nick who's killing it, and you're like, what the hell am I doing? Like, why am I live streaming on YouTube right now? Who the hell am I? Right. And that's true. I think that's absolutely true. I think I feel that way every time I create content. I'm like, someone out there has done this probably and done it better. I think every time I get a question, I get that cold, feeling, the pit of my stomach. This guy's about to dump the chump and I'm going to look like an idiot. I do. So I do the intro to multicast breakout for Cisco Live, which I inherited from Bo Williamson. And every time I get a question from the crowd in there, I'm waiting for somebody to make me look like an idiot in front of everybody, right? Like, and it's kind of like anxiety, like, and I don't know if I'm speaking to anybody when I say, like, if you ever had like an anxiety attack or something like that, like some kind of parasympathetic nervous response where you get that panic response or something. And even no matter how rational you are in your head thinking this is just an anxiety attack, it doesn't stop it, right? Just being aware that it exists is not proof against it. And so when we say, like, does imposter syndrome exist? Yes, I think that goes without saying. I don't think it's intellectually honest to try to say, oh, well, it just doesn't exist at all, right? Like, enough people have it, and without ever talking to each other about it or whatever, that it definitely exists. And a surprising number of people have it. And I promise you, people that you think are at the top of their game still struggle with it.
I mean, that's true. I mean, it's really funny, right? I look at my trajectory and, like, when did imposter syndrome start being a thing? And it really wasn't early on for me. Like, that wasn't intimidating. Like, when you start, I think there's an expectation that I don't know everything, which is fine, right?
Absolutely.
And so, like, I got wrapped into a pretty cool group of, people who are on Twitter and other network engineers. I mean, there are a lot of people I call peers now who were light years ahead of me when I got there. Mm-hmm. And it was inspiring, right? And so there's a point at which, like, you kind of go over the precipice and the inspiration is no longer inspiration, and you start realizing, wait a minute, I've come a long way, and I don't feel like I've actually I don't feel like I've closed the gap at all, right? I feel like I'm still I've put in a ton of time and effort, and I think it's really debilitating eventually, because I think we got a lot of, like, mid and senior level engineers, and you're right. there's a lot of people. In fact, we might have said some of their names right here as people that we've used as examples of people who are ridiculously good at what they do, like very much top of the class. And those people, I'm not saying Nick or Russ, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a good likelihood that they look at people who are involved in this industry because there are people who came before them, who accomplished more than they did, who were more influential, who, you know, like you can look at it from any measure whatsoever. What's that?
Or who are up and coming and are learning the new technologies much faster than they seem to think that they can, right? There's a million daggers from all directions, right, coming at you.
But this is the thing that I found is that this industry is incredibly accepting. I never once have been shot down. So like, it's really, I mean, the reason why you say like it's obvious that this exists, it has to, because I don't see people shooting people down. Like Stump the Chump is the only place I ever see that is in interviews, and I think it's stupid there. Like ultimately, when people are asking questions in your session, like they're just genuinely looking for answers. And if you were to say, you know what, I've never actually considered that, and you were going to step away, and I'll help you find the answer to that, that would be a completely acceptable answer. No one would think anything less of you. But when you're standing up there, you know, like we're constantly feeling like there's the potential of us to be the potential to be a fraud. And I just like, I don't understand where that comes from. I just don't understand, but it is so pervasive. And I think it's debilitating because what you said, I mean, like when I started writing my blog, and I'm still this way, why am I writing this? It's already been written 100 times. Like, what could I possibly bring that's unique to this particular situation? And then we started a podcast. I tried doing this like every other week for years on end. And then saying, okay, have I said anything of value? You know what I'm saying? Like, am I really doing anything of value? Like, I mean, even now, it's still like, is this really doing anything? Right? Like, it just continues and it's constantly there. But you know what I think it is? It is, for some of us, I think it will always be there.
It's the monster under the bed. Right.
The real accomplishment is just ignoring it. Like, I think that's the real accomplishment. The real accomplishment is ignoring it. And then also, you know, to what I said about Nick, is defining what it is that you want. Because work is only one facet of our life. And if it is your goal to be phenomenal in this industry and to have your name known for a very long time, you can do that. But it requires a certain level of sacrifice to get there. Or if your priorities are in other places, you just need to define those things. And then, like you said, you need to come to terms with it. You know, like, what does that mean? I will never be the most well-known engineer in the world. It's just not going to happen because I'm not putting the time in to do it. I'm happy to watch the people who are doing it right now rise to their level of acclaim that they deserve. It's awesome. It's just not for me. Right? I like having conversations like this and building community. That's more important to me. Still love engineering, right? You know, like, but it's interesting.
I think the community benefits, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this, I won't even say, I hesitate to use the word dark side because I don't know if dark side is the right word, but it's not even necessarily a taboo because more and more people talk about it. I don't know what you would say. Just a part of the industry that's not well discussed or understood or whatever is that people who are starting to get into it. I think you're right. They start off not feeling the imposter syndrome because there's an expectation that they won't know. But when you get past a certain point, that starts to like slowly, insidiously kind of creep out. And as people start asking you questions, as people start looking to you for answers, it becomes, you know, that's when it starts to grow and to become more of a thing. And I think we have a lot of people in our industry who are not just starting and are not at the end of their careers, but are somewhere in the middle and feel varying degrees of this. And I think it's important that I was talking with a friend of mine, Ben, on Twitter yesterday, and he was like, you know, I feel like a fraud or something like that. And I said, well, yeah, so that happens to me, that happens to everybody. And he's like, well, you know, being aware of it doesn't make it better. And I'm like, well, no, but being aware that other people have it too, at least, even if it doesn't, you know, make it go away for you, it at least makes it more normalized. I think the word I'm looking for in a very long abstract way is to say that we normalize some things, right? We normalize the fact that imposter syndrome is something that we'll inevitably have to deal with and stuff like that.
I mean,
I want to kind of want to talk about imposter syndrome for a little while. It's I first heard the term at a security conference. Someone was giving a talk on imposter syndrome, and it really rang home to a lot of people there. Even it caught my ear a little bit. But it seems like after that moment, for me, and it may just be because I learned of the term then, that I started to see the term everywhere. But it was so weird because I didn't know the word imposter syndrome before I heard it. And so I'm wondering sort of when did it become a thing? When did that term become a thing? And then most people, maybe I shouldn't say most people, but when people started identifying with imposter syndrome, because when I start thinking about like, what is imposter syndrome and why do I feel that way? Under the underlying emotions, I think it's really just confidence. Am I wrong? Right? It's just confidence. It's if you are feeling very confident in what you know and you're about to present to someone, then imposter syndrome doesn't exist. Or it exists very minimally. I think it might be just a mix of confidence and anxiety. Right. And anxiety comes from maybe a little bit of self-doubt. You know, everyone has a little bit of self-doubt, but if I know I'm dynamite on this subject and I'm prepared for any questions that come, and even the questions that I'm not prepared for, I'll take into consideration. I will look to find an answer. Then I'm not suffering from imposter syndrome, right? Isn't it just confidence? But also I want to say that I too am not immune to imposter syndrome. And it didn't happen to me until after I got my CCIE. It didn't happen to me in a big way until after I got my CCIE. And I think you guys have touched on this already, but when I was coming up and when I was studying and when I was going through the certification path, it was okay for me not to know things because I was learning, because I wasn't a CCIE. Right? It was okay for me not to know something because I wasn't the expert. Right? So it was okay for me to make some mistakes and some assumptions that may be incorrect because I was just learning. But also in my personal and professional life, I always came out of the gate, even before a CCIE, with very strong confidence in meetings, when I was giving presentations, when I was meeting with customers. And that's because I wasn't an expert, so I put in the extra time to study the technology, the topology, the devices, the whatever I was doing for work. I put in the extra time to show that, like, hey, I really do know this. I may not be an expert yet, but I really do know this, and I've put in a lot of the time, and I'm going to demonstrate that to you now. So I really didn't feel a lot of imposter syndrome. But after I got my CCIE, I found myself, and I talked about this on my own live stream, I found myself being the last one to speak up at meetings. The last one to give an opinion about something, the last one to answer a question. And the reason was because when I spoke up about something, whether I answered a question or rendered an opinion on something, people were looking to me for guidance and for leadership and to be correct. Because at that point, I had earned my CCIE. It was sort of implied that now you're the expert. Now whatever you say, regarding this facet that you are the expert in, must be right, must be true. And I found myself occasionally being incorrect about a few things. And then I started to become very guarded, and I didn't want to share anymore because I didn't want to be wrong. And I felt very bad about it, and it was after a while I realized that, like, holy crap, like, I'm now the expert. I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. I don't feel like I'm that much smarter than I was before, but I've achieved something. I have a milestone. But all of a sudden, my confidence took a dive because it was no longer okay for me to walk in the room and not know everything. And that hurt. And it actually took a while for me to, like, get my confidence back up to the point to say, you know what? I'm a CCIE. I'm still learning. I will fail. I'm not right all the time. You know what I mean? And I just kind of, like, had to say that to myself, to my soul. And then now I can come back into meetings and have discussions with people without having that imposter syndrome and want to engage in those back and forths. But imposter syndrome hit me hard after the CCIE. And I don't know, you guys have both been through the CCIE journey. What's your take on it? Did it hit you at the same time? Are these feelings common, or is this unique to just my personality type?
So I think, I completely recognize what you're saying. Like, that's not foreign to me, right? Like, the idea that all of a sudden you have the certification that, it comes with this title that's expert. And I really, really, really dislike that word. Like, I'm experienced. You know, like expert, I don't know that we ever achieve. Well, let me rephrase this. Expertise is always the next level of knowledge. Like you never, to me, I never achieve expertise. There's no way. There's always something else to learn. There's always something else that I can grow into something. And so to me, I may be more experienced than maybe some other people in the room. I may have considered this technology a lot more than other people in the room, but I'd never ever walk in being like, I'm the expert. Like that's just, I don't have that level of confidence. And it's not because I lack confidence. I'm highly confident in my skills, but I know what I don't know. You know what I'm saying? There's something in here. I don't want to steal it because Donald Sharp said it, so I'm going to put it up on the screen. Right, and it's imposter syndrome is the Donald Rumsfeld statement about known unknowns, and that is it. Is I know that I don't know everything, and because of that, it keeps me humble. I don't come in with the, hey, look at how much of an expert I am. I come in with the, hey, I can help in this situation. I know I can help. I'm confident I can do this. There's nothing in technology I can't do, but there still are things I can learn. I don't know everything off the top of my head. And that's one of those interesting things. The pressure actually comes from other people in this case, because they look at your certification and say, you're an expert. And Tim, before you jump in, I have one more thought here. And I definitely want to let you go. But the thought here is, I also think that there is a level of this that's tied into the social media crew, right? So the people who do social media tend to associate with other people for the purposes of learning. Like I know who I follow. I follow people who are very smart, because I feel like if I follow people who are smarter than me, I can get to their level. I can work and I can get towards it, and you know, hopefully some of their intelligence and some of their experience will rub off on me, and I'll be able to use that, right? Like that's kind of like what I do. But in doing that, I surround myself with people who are just 1, 2, 3 steps beyond what I'm doing. And I have a bunch of peers who are just like me, and I have a bunch of people who are coming up around who are going to be as experienced as I am at some point in their career, but they're not there yet, right? And none of those people are the ones causing me imposter syndrome. It's the ones I choose to associate with. So Tony, when you said, like, I could go into meetings because I had studied, it's completely possible that you just hadn't exposed yourself to people who knew more. Right. So the idea is, you know, like in my work, if I didn't live on social media and know that there were people like Tim in SD-WAN, and there were people like Tim in SDA, and, you know, like there are these people who've like really taken the time to learn these technologies, and I know that they know more than I do in them. Like, you know, like if I didn't know that, then I would come in with supreme confidence, right? It's knowing that there's that next level that really comes down. So it's that known unknown thing. So thanks, Donald Sharp, for that. So Tim, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, dude, you're fine, man. So what happens to me a lot of times is when someone else is talking and I'm listening to them intently, and you know, something will pop in my head like, hey, I this person just made a really good point. It triggered something that I just want to bring in. I'm very bad about waiting my turn, because I know it's going to fly out as quickly as it came in. So apologies for stepping in there. But what you were saying, Tony, about the confidence, yes, obviously confidence is part of it, right? But I think what ultimately, at least for me, what it ends up being is that, and you guys can tell me if you agree or disagree, or if that's just another piece of it, which is more likely, we tend to hold ourselves to a much higher standard than we expect for other people. And that means yes. You know what I mean? So that imposter syndrome sneaks in there, because we're holding ourselves up to this incredible standard that other people aren't holding us up. I don't think other people are really holding us to that same standard. It's ourselves, like doing it. We kind of do it to ourselves a little bit. So that's the main thing I wanted to get out before I forgot about it.
I think there's a lot of truth in that, Tim. I really do. I think there's a lot of truth in that. I'm coming up on a review period. And I just had this conversation with my wife as we're talking about, you know, just stuff that's going on with work and the fact that this is coming up. And I get the comment from my boss that you've been doing a really good job. Now, I've been here for a year, and I felt like I got a slow start. I felt like I've done okay. I've done the stuff that's been handed to me. I've done that well. But like every time I've talked to my boss, as I'm writing my own like self eval, like the thing that's ringing in the back of my head is I am not doing as much as I could. Like I'm not having as much of an impact as I could. I'm not doing as much as I can. And meanwhile, my boss is sitting there scratching his head, is like, everything I've handed you, you've done well. Like, you know, like, and so I think that there are people, and I know there's 3 IEs on this call, so maybe this is a self-selecting group. I feel like people who pursue bettering themselves are all that way, that they hold themselves to a higher standard than what everyone else does, which is exactly the idea behind imposter syndrome, because it's going to perpetuate this idea that someone else is going to know more than you, and somehow that's going to be negative. Like somehow that's going to be result in some negative experience. There's been some great comments here. I definitely want to bring them in because I haven't wanted to disrupt, and some of them are funny, but I related with this one a fair amount. I don't write 2,000 words a day, but I can eat 2,000 calories like it's nothing. Benjamin, amen, brother. So this was in a comment someone had made before, that Russ had made a statement, and I've heard him say this as well, that he writes like 2,000 words a day just out of habit. That's how much he writes, and so that was in reply to that, and I thought it was awesome.
Wait, do you guys stop at 2,000? Because
you know, just some confirmation here that, you know, confidence absolutely has a huge impact. Also, you know, humility is so important the more experienced you become. I think that's absolutely true.
Absolutely true.
And I don't know how else. I don't know how else to do it.
This is true. There's nothing else to say about it. That's a very true statement.
I'm also an expert at being humble. and this is the one that made me laugh. Cue Spider-Man pointing. So I wish I had the meme just to drop up in here. Here, this is good too. This one just came up. It makes me think of John Postel. Is it Postel? I don't even know how to say last name. On the robustness principle, be liberal in what you accept and conservative in what you send. Like it's there. And then Laz always adding the conversation. You can eat the Michael Phelps diet, just you and your favorite 13,000 calories.
Yeah, just go work off 10,000 of them after that, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking I don't have quite the exercise routine that he does. Maybe I shouldn't eat the 13,000 calories. Oh man.
I don't have the exercise routine in a month, what he does in the first hour of the day, I'm sure.
His warm-up. Yes, yeah, absolutely true.
I just started cycling, and that's a fun experience, let me tell you. My friend Steve and Dustin, they're both big cyclists, and they talked me into it, and Steve sold me his old bike and everything, and Dustin helped me get started. And I'm still at that point where, hey, it's like kind of fun, you know, doing the cycle, but I'm on the road and I'm freaking out when I get over like 15 miles an hour, because it's me and the road and like this helmet, and that's all you got, right? If you take a spill at 20 miles an hour, you're in real trouble. But it's good exercise. I am enjoying it. If I don't die, it'll be great.
So we've been absolutely nailing some of the tough cultural things, and I think it's absolutely a great conversation. I think that it's something that we need to have. And there's one more in here I think that we absolutely need to talk about. Now, give credit where it's due, Tim. These were your ideas when you approached us. Like, hey, in fact, this was before you even knew about the live stream. So it was like, hey, like this is probably too much for one podcast episode, but like, do you think people would want to hear about this? And I'm like, let me tell you about what we're doing, because this would be great for this, right? So we'll, instead of spending 45 minutes talking about all of the negative aspects of working in IT, we'll spend 2 hours doing it anyway. No, that's not negative. I think it's helpful. And I
think normalizing is helpful. I think that's the most helpful part of it. Is
absolutely,
we're building a community, right? So we need to normalize the parts of our community that are hard, or the parts of our technology field that are hard. And
there is something incredibly freeing in knowing that you're not the only one, right? Like to know that other people, like imposter syndrome. I think a lot of it is that is just once, or if you do, once you do, knowing that not only does it exist, but you're not at all out of the norm for experiencing it, makes it all the more tolerable to kind of work through. And same thing with that whole learning treadmill thing and kind of setting priorities and all those things. Like once you know that you're not the only one who's pushing into that, it makes it easier to rationalize and figure out, like, you know, what is it that we need to do. And I love this last one that we're covering, because I think that this is this is something that is a big deal in our culture, and we do it to ourselves, and it's hero culture. The way you put it in here, it's the diving catch culture of lionizing and rewarding things like doing this 11th hour, like, just unbelievable tasks, save the day. And I feel like, it resonates with me because I went through it. I watch other people go through it, and I wonder why it's so prevalent. Because all it does is hurt us. Like, all it does is hurt us. It enables all the bad behaviors culturally. It doesn't really solve anything. So I'd love to hear your take, because you brought this topic, and I'd love to hear what you think, and then I'm sure it will spark conversation.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So a year ago, I had a really hard day at work, and I came home and I was exhausted, and I made a video that's like, I think it was actually one of the first ones on my YouTube channel. Like, I felt strongly enough about it that I was going to make a video about it. And you can go to my channel and you can watch it on your own time. Don't do it now, obviously. But the point of it ultimately is just what I said, right? Is that first of all, our field, if you will, lionizes this culture of diving catches, and I call them diving catches because it's like, you're all the way down, you've got the Hail Mary, you have to catch the ball or we lose the game type of thing, right? And the truth, of course, is that with a little bit of planning, the business understanding the expectations a little bit better, we don't actually need to do any of that, right? But I worked at a place. I used to be an enterprise engineer, and so before Cisco, and in this place, the IT was like kind of like the redheaded stepchild as it is everywhere, right? And I hate to say, I don't know if I can say redhead stepchild. If it helps, I'm married to a redhead, so I don't know if that gives me latitude. But
we recorded with Amy Engineer last night
to use that.
It's a good thing that we recorded with her last night, and she wasn't also a guest tonight, because the sparkly bat may have come out.
Amy, that's right, you did. That's right. So she'll probably hit me hard with the.
I understand that she's keeping a list of all the people that have provided transgressions, and she missed out on Cisco Live this year. So next year there will be extra effort in catching up. Yep.
I've never met Amy, and I've been to a few Cisco Lives, and I think I've even passed her in the halls, but I was in a hurry. I need to do that. But anyway, not to digress, which I will. So the place that I worked, every month, there was a month cycle where you had to the customers had to place orders by the end of the month or something, or this was like a big part of the cycle. So to get work done before the end of the month was a huge deal. But a lot of times stuff came in at the 11th hour, and work would get done, but it would get done with, all-nighters, and you're spending all this time. And so every month they would have this thing they called Star Performer. It was a meeting. It was from management. It would gather everybody into the auditorium, and they would show who's the star performer and why are they the star performer this month, right? And it was always something like, so-and-so got this request from the business, right before they went on a vacation. They canceled their vacation and they stayed and they got it done, and the business, sent its kudos, and we were able to make this thing because this person sacrificed their vacation to make it happen. Everybody give them a big round of applause. And I'm looking left and right, and people are clapping, and I'm reasonably sure that 90% of them are clapping because they're expected to clap, right? Not because they actually think this is a great thing. But I'm just like, what the hell is wrong with these? What the hell is wrong with this as an institution? That, first of all, that this happens often enough that this is a thing we do every month, and second of all, that this is a celebration. Like, we're celebrating this, right? We're all like, way to go, man. Good job. Here's your gift card. And that just made me sick to my stomach, man. Like, and you realize that it's not just my enterprise. I mean, a lot of businesses run that way, and a lot of businesses run their IT organizations that way, especially. And so I feel very strongly that redlining, I also call it redlining, because I say it's akin to like holding your foot down on the metal and burning out the engine, right? Is that a lot of organizations do that. And so in this video and here, I'll say that a little bit of that, and you touched on this earlier, Jordan, some of that's on us, right? Like we are the instrumentation of that engine. If we fail to trigger the alarm lights, the driver doesn't know that the engine's about to blow. Like there's some responsibility on us, and I say us collectively, obviously, to set those expectations. And you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said that that's become a cultural norm for us, is this dive and catch culture, and it's kind of self-enabling and self-defeating at the same time. But I don't know what the answer is, besides simply because if one person says, hey, this is too hard, oh, we'll just go find somebody else that won't complain and they'll get it done, right? It's almost like you need like an IT union or something to collectively put their feet down and say, yeah, I'm not canceling my vacation to get this work done, So again, I don't come to you with solutions. I just say I feel that is that if the industry has a true dark side, it's probably something close or akin to that.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think that more of this is on us than I think we establish this. And I'm going to say again, us collectively, broadly, I think we established this. And, I think there's a natural inclination. We glorify people who are able to save the day. It's almost like a comic book, right? Very heroic. You come in and you are the only one with the skills, and there's something really validating when you're starting your career as kind of being the only person that can do something. But when you're the only person, guess what? You're the only person. And so I spent a lot of time early in my career building stuff and never communicating. Not because I wasn't willing to, or because I was just ready to move on to the next thing. Documentation, what's that for? Like, that's not important. And like having a meeting to kind of explain what all this is. Well, then when, the excrement hits the fan, guess who is on the call? Right? Like, there's nobody else who's going to be able to unravel whatever twisted web you've woven there. And so I think that this is right. This is one of those things. And so like, I look at this and I say, whoa, like I am as guilty as anybody else early in my career. But then what I learned, right, is that if you're the only person, you can't take a vacation. You can't take a day off. You can't have an evening where you can commit to like, I'm going to go sit and have a couple drinks and not have to worry about it. Like, you just can't do that when you are always on call because you're the only person with that information. It feels good, right, to go in and be the person that saves the day. And sometimes it's required. I can think of times where like there was just nothing else we could do. There was, huge, massive outage. It was causing a big deal. That's why you pay us decently. Let's go do the thing that needs to be done and fix it. But my approach to that now is way different than it used to be. My approach to that now is more like, okay, I guess I have to, right? Like, this is part of the job. I got to go do it. I'm going to go do it. And I don't care about the accolades that come from it. I just want to go home and go back to my bed. Like, like that's where I want to be, or home with my family on this weekend. But you're right though, in that enabling that culture, especially if it's been done over time, the culture then becomes the norm. And when the culture becomes the norm, pushing back on it is very hard. Pushing back on it is incredibly difficult. And if you are in a place that expects heroic action, get out. Like, I mean, like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, find somewhere else, because that culture is going to eat you up. They're going to use every ounce of you. You're not going to get anything for it. And that's it. Like, they'll give you a gift card, like, congratulations. Like, here's $100. Believe me, your time is worth more than that. If you spent that time studying, that could be worth thousands of dollars in salary, or that could be used whatever. Like, I mean, like, there's just so much better uses of time. And so this isn't an abdication of responsibility. It's not what I'm advocating for. The idea is there still is responsibility. We still, because of the nature of what we do, we have off hours cuts, stuff breaks. You need to support it, but you got to find ways to provide tangible, ways to share the responsibility across a team. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm already hearing the people who work in one person shops who are like, man, it'd be really nice to have a team. Don't know what to tell you. Like, that's just the nature of a one person shop. So, but I mean, if there are people there, cross training them, getting them up to speed, documentation, these are all parts of the project. These are all parts. Don't be the person who has to be the hero.
That's on the business too, right? These one-person shops, right? The business is investing in risk and calculating. There's a monetary risk value associated with the one-person shop. What if that person gets hit by a bus, or God forbid, or whatever, right? Like that's a risk that the business is gambling on, and somebody has done the risk analysis or the cost analysis and decided that, hey, this guy's a replaceable part. We'll use him up and we'll replace him with another person who's looking for a job later on or something,
So I want to speak up here. I've been diligently listening to you guys' conversation, and I don't know. I feel I think I feel the opposite of you guys, and maybe I'm just providing the other side of the fence. But I don't mind the stay late. I don't mind the extra work. And you know what? Whatever comes from that, if it's a $50 gift card or something better, it's not someone rewarding me for like, good job, you stayed late. It's a thank you. It's a hope if I stayed late one time, maybe I get a gift card or something. If I stay late every day in a month, I hope there's more than that. If there is more than that, then it's incentivizing me to always make sure I'm putting, 110% in, make sure I'm going the extra mile, make sure I'm doing everything extra. I mean, I would say that I've gotten to where I am in my career, both in IT and all of my previous jobs and career, because I was in construction before I came into IT. I came into IT a little late some of us are slower to mature than others. Anyhow, even when I was in construction, if I was working for myself or I was working for somebody else, I always put in the extra time. I always did a little bit extra. I always tried to. And that's because I was standing next to the other guys who were ready to be done at 4 or 5. And when you want a little extra, when you want to ask for a raise, when you want a bonus, when you want some extra time off, you stay till 5, you stay till 6, you stay till 7, you do some extra work, you clean up the yard, or you do this, or you do that. You do that extra work. And therefore, when it comes time where you need something, you're there for it. You're getting that first pick. You're getting the consideration. More times than not, in construction, it was very seasonal work. Christmas week, a lot of people got 2 checks in their envelope. That was your check from last week, which you were getting paid for, and it was your check for the hours you just finished, which means you don't come back to work next week. You've been laid off. I never got 2 checks. I always put in the extra time. I always tried to show my value to the organization. And that allowed me to continue to work through the season when everyone else was taking unemployment.
So let me
and this same mentality has, and I don't, maybe it's instinctual, maybe it's a mentality thing, maybe it's how I was brought up, maybe there's a lot of factors that bring me into this decision, but this has followed me into IT. I've done the same thing in IT. I always put in the extra time. I always stay late. I always try to do that sliding catch, like you said, to use that analogy. I go for it. I 100% go for it. I want to. It's how I prove myself. I mean, it's when you go home at the end of the day. Look, I can go home at the end of the day after 8 hours every day, and no one would think any less of me. I absolutely could. But what would I think of myself? I would think I'm just putting in the norm. I'm putting in minimum. Minimum, I have to work 8 hours. I got to work 40 hours to get the paycheck. Well, I want to be more than just the paycheck. I want to provide real value. I want to be the extra. So I put in the extra, and I try to in every manner, in every way that I can. And I'm not talking about just like working myself to the bone. But when needed, man, you do it. And I do it with a smile on my face. I love to do that stuff.
So I think that there's a perspective here, and I think we're coming at this from 2 different directions. And I'm 100% agreement with everything you just said. 100% agreement. The difference is you're choosing versus you're being told. The difference is
expectation.
Yeah, the expectation that is what you do versus you going above and beyond. So this goes back to a comment I said earlier when we were talking about the studying thing. Every decision you make about what you do with your job is an ROI decision. What you just explained is an ROI decision. It benefits you.
Absolutely.
Right? It's ultimately, the idea is you are investing into your career for the purposes of future advancement, for the purposes of being on the top of the totem pole when it comes to be considered for raises, for bonuses, for promotions, for anything, right? And I'm 100% there with you. That's been my entire career. So this isn't about the level of effort you choose to put into your work to stand out. This is the Herculean effort regularly. This is a culture of stepping in and being required to give up your weekends, being required to go and do those things. And if you don't, A, it doesn't get fixed, or B, someone else is going to step in and do all of that stuff, and you're left kind of holding the bag. We can't set up a culture where 100, 110, 120, 130% is the expectation. That's not fair for the people who can't do that in their current state. For the people who want to do the ROI and do that, that's great. But it is not fair to set a culture that requires that of you. What happens when you're studying for your CCIE, Tony, and you need that time? You need to go home. You need some time in the morning. You need some time in the evening. You need that time to study. And the thing breaks in the evening. Well, if that happens once every few weeks, okay. I adjust my schedule. That's part of my job. What if that's something you're doing 3 times a week? Well, now it's interfering with your life, right? Like now that hero culture, the idea that you have to step up and be the person is interfering with all the other stuff that you're doing. And that is the expectation, right? Now, if you want to be the hero when you start your career and use that to make a name for yourself and use that to advance, more power to you. You're going to piss off everyone around you, but more power to you. You're also going to help establish the idea that that is the norm, and the next person is going to be measured off of your standards, right? And so there's a balance to this. The idea that, like, you know, I'm saying this from experience. I saw the negative consequences of my actions when I was the hero, like when I played that role, when I came in and I was the guy. I insisted on being the guy. I was the first one to respond anytime something was out. I would have my laptop open on my lap at 8 o'clock at night, be working on stuff. Like, I mean, like that was my MO. And I very much had the same attitude as you, Tony, because I was doing it for my own benefit, but I was hurting everybody around me because that became the expectation of my place of work. I became the level management thought, wow, look at what Jordan's doing. Why isn't everyone else doing that? You know, and then all of a sudden they had a negative connotation and they were putting in 40 to 50 hour weeks. Like, this is not like they were sitting around being lazy. They were doing their job. They were doing what they were asked. And I made that somehow seem like less than because of what I did. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but there's a calculation to this. I'm not at all saying don't be the guy who works hard, but I would say put that effort into your own development. Work hard for your company, always be the best person on the team. Like, always work to be the best person on the team. You may not always be the best person on the team, but always be working to be the best person on the team. But don't let yourself get into that environment where that is the expectation that all of a sudden, like, you have to give up all of your time, that somehow you're being paid a salary for 40 hours a week, but the expectation is that you're working nearly double that. Like, that's not okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Jordan. I do agree with that. And I think maybe I was just misunderstanding the perspective Tim was presenting. But yeah, I mean, I would say if I found myself in a situation, the way Tim was describing it, and you as well, Jordan, where that's the expectation, you're getting paid for 40 hours, but you're working 50, 60 hours, and that's the expectation. I mean, I'm a walker, man. I'm walking away. I would go to an organization where I will put in the extra effort because I will be thanked for it and compensated for it. You know,
exactly.
Different story altogether.
Not just once.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's why I think I was misunderstanding, because I'm always trying to do that. And that's because, fortunately, I do work for an organization where if you put in the extra effort when it's needed, when it's requested, right, they thank you for it and they compensate you for it. And it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling to know you got a little something extra because you gave a little something extra. And if you did that all the time, then it's time to move that level extra up. But if I wasn't being compensated for that, if that didn't happen, yeah, I'm a walker. See you later. Let someone else do that. I'm going to go somewhere where my extra time is valued.
That's right. Exactly it. Like if I couldn't say it better, like I was going to ask you when you're done, I was like, well, what do you do when you were done? Because I was listening to everything you were saying, and I was thinking, I think he misunderstood me. Let me just ask one question, which is, what if all that extra work you put in is nothing? Like nobody gives you anything for it. So I think you touched on that perfectly.
Yeah, I'm gone. Yep.
I think the theme of the night is we have to be intentional about the ROI. Really, when it comes down to it, and ROI doesn't just apply to a project that we do at work. ROI applies to our time and effort and how we apply it, right? And that is how do we spend our time and effort, and what is that doing for us in our career? And then there's not a negative to saying, hey, like I want to be excellent for my business, because my approach, similar to yours, Tony. When I talk about the way that I treat my company is, so long as I'm hired by you, if I'm currently employed by you, you are going to get my best effort. Like that. And that's a rotational thing that happens every 2 weeks. It's a whole other thing we can talk about, because talk about loyalty to companies or whatever, but it's this 2-week rotating cycle. It sounds really harsh, but it's the reality of what's going on. You're going to give me a check. And so long as you employ me, you've got the best me. Like, that's what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you the best me. And if the best me somehow falls short, the expectation is whatever, then I need to change the dynamic. It's either address it at work or move on. And I think that, the problem, the challenge that comes from this is that I think we sometimes go into that naively. We aren't doing the ROI. It's not about ROI. It's just about meeting the expectation. Something is down. And all of a sudden you have to be the one to fix it. And again, I think that sometimes we get the high off of it. Like, it's the adrenaline rush, it's the whatever. And you know what? If that's the way that you like living, more power to you. Again, you're going to piss off everybody around you, but like, it's your career. You do what you want to do. But I do think that there's definitely two sides to this. There's definitely I have made a decision about the value that I want to bring to my company, and I'm hoping that that is an investment into my future. And then there is the culture. I think it was Tim, you were explaining the environment, right? Like, they were giving out awards, and the awards were based off of like these Herculean efforts, where basically the predication was that you had to sacrifice some significant portion of your life to the company for no extra pay, for them to give you a piece of, I don't know, here's your star trophy, like, I mean, like, and if that's what you're getting, you need to evaluate, right? Because the ROI is not working in your favor. There's a comment here, Laz also, Laz shows up a lot, but if you're constantly working 50 to 60 hours, your salary is being diluted. And that's kind of the way that I see it as well. Tony, in your case, when you were talking, your salary is not being diluted. Right? Because you have the risk, like when you talked about the construction job, you have the risk of being laid off during the holiday season, and you didn't, right? And so those extra hours were the assurance for that next one. Sometimes the ROI is about learning a skill. That's where we're spending time at home. We're not getting paid, but it's all about being able to skill up and do that next thing. Sometimes the ROI is about establishing good favor with your company. You mentioned that as well, Tony. Like, that has value, because then when things come up, even stupid stuff that seems like trivial, I established good favor, and I established the idea that I could go to conferences whenever I wanted to. Like that wasn't the culture at the company, but because I established good favor, it became something that was culture for me, right? And all of this, you should be very strategically thinking about where it is that you're spending your time and why you're doing it. It shouldn't just be because it's expected of you. And I think that's really the crux of the argument, for me, at least.
But the comment here is that 50 to 60 hours, you're getting paid a salary based on a 40-hour work week. So 50 to 60 hours a week, if you're putting in the extra time and not, if you're putting in the extra time and not getting compensated for it, then you're making less than what your salary is.
That's true.
Yeah,
it is true. But there's lots of ways. There's lots of ways for compensation, though. It's not always money.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like you said, it's favor. Sometimes it's experience. Sometimes it's just I don't lose my job, right? Like, I mean, like that's sometimes that's what it is. So I think that that's dilute, yes, to some degree. I would say you have to push it out past 50 to 60. When you get to 70 to 80, and it's like, okay, well, that's crazy. Like, you're really getting paid for 40. And the other thing that really irritates me about this, and it's hard to paint with broad brushstrokes because it typically doesn't always apply. But when the work is light, do you get to go home? I mean, honest question, right? Because if this is really a two-way street, and the idea is I'm going to show up when I need to, and when the work is light, do you feel the freedom to not be in the office? I mean, pre-COVID, right? Like when you're at home, no one really knows the difference. But pre-COVID, do you feel like you could walk out at 2:00 in the afternoon because there's just really not that much to do, and no one's going to bat an eyelash at it? And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, then you should think twice about giving extra time, because this isn't a symbiotic relationship between you and your employer, right? Your employer is taking advantage of your willingness to give extra effort, but when things are light, no, there's work to be done. You got to be here all, and this is the whole idea of salary. I mean, I could really get on a tangent here about salary.
In fact, you got me on, because I was just thinking about that. Well, when the work is light, do you feel comfortable, walking out of there a couple hours early? And I felt like saying, we're live streaming, right? I can't give you a real answer to that till later. But I do. In fact, I do in my specific situation. I do, generally speaking. And the reason is that I've made this comment at work, and that is, I don't mind going for like a long lunch if things are slow. If things are slow and I want to go for a long lunch, or if I want to kick out an hour early at the end of the day, here or there, I don't mind doing that. And because I always justify it by saying, when things are slow, we like to give ourselves a little bit of time to relax. Because when things aren't slow and the crap is hitting the fan, I'm putting in the extra time. I'm putting in the extra effort. So definitely, do I want to go, instead of, brown bagging it one day, go out to the restaurant and sit there for 2 hours, and bring a group of people and have a lunch? Yeah, no problem. When things are slow, when it's permitted, yeah, I'll go for that. Because when the stuff really hits the fan, when you really need to buckle down, I'm putting in the extra time, and I don't feel ashamed about it. Like, look at the time cards, it's all there. You know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely. But to what, everyone has been saying, if the expectation is to put in the extra time, then absolutely not. Yeah, I wouldn't. I guess I feel very fortunate. I work for a great small company that allows me to have this, this I don't know, it's not freedom, but we've all earned it. We've all earned it within our company. I haven't worked for a company where that was the culture, or else all of us would have gone.
Right. In complete fairness, I asked that question, and I asked that question because I have worked at places that were that way, where they would expect the extra hours, but would never actually give you time on the back end as compensation for that. Where I'm at now is not that at all. And even my last company wasn't that way at all, right? Like, the idea is, like, I work at a place where I'd very confidently say, yes, that's okay. And the fact on the live stream, I feel no qualms about that whatsoever. If all of a sudden I put in a 60 or 70 hour week because that was what was required, the next week can be light, and that's okay. And no one's going to bat an eyelash at it, because the idea is that's what salary is about. The salary is you're supposed to be like this super critical employee. In fact, most of us shouldn't actually be salary in technology, but that's a whole other thing. The definition is very broadly stated, right? Most of us shouldn't be salary. Most of us should be hourly. But the fact that we are salary means that your role is so critical to the company that we can't define the hours that we need you. The idea is we need you to be here on average for a 40-hour work week. We need you to be here when it's critical, because your services are unique to the company and essential to our operation. But that freedom comes with a benefit on the other side that no one ever seems to really talk about. And that is, when your services aren't essential, you should be able to walk out the door. And no employer wants to have that well, I won't say no. Most employers don't want to have that conversation about what it means to be salaried. But, think about your executive vice president. If he works a long week, guess what he's going to be doing? He's going to be scooting out early because that's the expectation, right? Because that's what a real salary employee is about. And so, anyway, I didn't want to get into the salary because, we could do a whole show just on salary itself, because I think that's one of the biggest scams that's ever happened in technology, is the fact that they've made people salaried rather than hourly. Because if we were paid hourly, this whole conversation would be moot. It would be completely irrelevant, because if you're gonna go be making bank because you're working overtime, go work as many overtime hours as they'll give you. Time and a half, get to double time. Do it every week, take some good vacations, right? Like, it's a completely different thing. The problem is that a lot of people seem to be taken advantage of, and I think that's the point. Is that I don't want to see anyone get taken advantage of. Think about your time wisely. That was good. That was a bit contentious. Not contentious. We agreed, but I think there's a lot of different angles. And I'm even watching the chat here. There's quite a few comments in here. Tony, you have some support amongst the people in the chat here. So
people out there who are 100% gung ho, ready to lay it all down. But I would ask you, to those people, what would you do if you laid it all down and you did, you would set yourself on fire, self-immolated for the company, and then the company was like, cool, come back in next week and do it again, right? Like, I mean, so there has to be an expectation of fairness. Nobody's saying you can't deliver and just keep delivering and be awesome. We're saying, an ROI discussion, if you will, or whatever, that there needs to be an expectation of fairness on the back end from the people you're sacrificing for.
All right. So I got a couple of questions. I want to learn more about what Tim's doing. So we've covered the hard stuff. So let's make it a bit lighter. I want to learn some things. So I'm going to throw some stuff. There was completely no prep here, so I'm sorry if I throw you off with any of these questions.
Oh God, I hope I can answer this correctly.
Yeah, so we're gonna get into the nitty gritty on SD-WAN protocol. I'm kidding. We're not getting into
what is the IP protocol for?
No.
Yeah.
So Tim, what's a non-technical skill you're working on right now?
Well, I'm working on that cycling thing. Which, believe it or not, is a skill. The balancing and honestly, just the fear of not dying when you get above 20 miles per hour is phenomenal. I mean,
you're working on not dying. I like that. Cool.
I've been working on that one for a while. So far, I'm succeeding.
Yeah, that's success right there. Nice.
Let me think. A non-technical skill, I can't think of anything besides that right now. Just because of the cycle I'm in for work, I'm buried. My head is buried in work right now. But cycling is definitely something that I'm enjoying, and it gets me away from the keyboard, and it gets me up, and it gets me fit. So I'm actually really enjoying that right now.
I'm just going to do a quick interlude. If you are watching this right now and you have questions for Tim, now would be a good time, because I'm just going to start asking him like rapid fire some of the things I've got on my list. I welcome people to the rapid fire question session for Tim here. So what's a tool that you often pull out of your tool bag that you think other networkers may overlook?
Tool that I think other networkers may overlook.
Right. Is there something you go to regularly that you think that not a lot of people use or know about?
Oh man, that's a good question. I would say Google, but everybody uses Google. I'm actually on that one because I gotta think about that a lot, because because of the whole custom CPOC thing, my breadth is so wide, I can't think of a single tool that I'm like, this is my go-to that nobody else would know about. Okay. Maybe the WAN emulator. The WAN emulator I use that a lot in CPOC.
Okay, so tell us about that tool. Okay, I do, but I don't know that everyone listening does. So
yeah, fair. So the WAN and T-Rex, actually, I got T-Rex on my channel as well. Yes.
Yeah, T-Rex is nice, man. We use it in our lab.
Yeah. It's excellent, right? So for WAN-M, WAN-M is a WAN emulator, meaning that it's a virtual machine that we basically bridge in some fashion between two boxes. And as the packets pass through the WAN emulator, we have the ability to adjust latency, loss, jitter, whatever, make the packets crap. In CPOC, we do this a lot with UCS. So we'll put a UCS, we'll bridge the NICs between two routers. We'll bridge a NIC to the router, from a router to the NIC, and then the other side of the NIC will go to the other router, and then we're running that WAN-M virtual machine and set up all the port pairs and everything in VMware. And it's great, right? Especially for SD-WAN, but also in other kind of CPOCs. Sometimes people just want to see what's going to happen to their network when things go bad, right? So, you can cause other kind of fault scenarios, like on the LAN side. I mean, it says WAN-M, but honestly, you can put it anywhere you want to cause problems, and just see how the applications react, see how ICE acts when you start like crapping up the packets to ICE for .1x and stuff, right? You know what I mean? That's a great tool, and one I would absolutely recommend for anybody who's labbing They have virtual versions of it. I think for people who use Eve, you can build a Linux box and just get, you might be able to get clone it or just install the WinM OVA or something as a Linux box. It's just Knoppix. I think Linux is what it's built on. So I would definitely recommend, especially for people who are labbing, to use that. And then T-Rex, of course, like I said, traffic generation, that is pretty perfect. I mean, the weaknesses of it is that you can't pick how fast, like you can kind of tweak it a little bit in terms of how much you're sending, and because it's a packet replay, that's the weakness of it. You can't say I want to send 10,000 packets per second. You're replaying like real traffic. So, but what's great about it is, especially on the SD-WAN side, it fools all the DPI engines, NVAR and Cosmos and all of them, and you can do the application-aware routing stuff with it. It's great. And just if you want to see dashboards get painted for different apps, network apps, it's great. Demonstration stuff, right?
Nice. So we got a couple questions here. Favorite routing protocol? This is from Fareed.
As a design engineer, I don't have a favorite routing protocol.
Wow. Did you see that dodge there? That was crafty.
No. Okay. No. So straight. I really don't have a favorite routing protocol. I will say that. I will, however, say that I solve more problems with BGP than probably any other routing protocol. And that's because of the tunability.
It's Swiss Army
inherent
knife,
in the protocol, right?
All right. So adding craziest build
that I did. They had a full MPLS backbone that we built for data center interconnects. We had 3 data centers. We had 3 different firewalls with route leaking and VRF leaking everywhere. There was SAS. It was all inside the pod. It wasn't like real SAS, but it was insane. Like, you got to look at the topology. I don't know how else to say it except just go to look at the SD-WAN CPOC I did on my channel and look at the topology, if nothing else, and you'll see what kind of a crazy.
We'll shoot a link out. Yeah, for sure. It's and if people are looking for it, it's Carpe DMVPN, right?
Yep.
Carpe dash DMVPN. I like it.
Yeah, Carpe DMVPN. Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
The YouTube channel is just Carpe DMVPN, no dash. It's just Carpe.
Okay, right. You just search for Carpe DMVPN and you'll find your way. I don't think you're gonna have a lot of overlap. Yeah.
No, it turns out I didn't.
Okay. Let's see. Who would you say has had the biggest influence on you, professionally?
Professionally? Probably, it's a split.
Tell us both. That's fine.
I'd say working, the more I've worked with my friend Dustin, I would say he's had a large impact on me professionally. It's actually kind of 3 ways. So Catherine McNamara is a good friend of mine. She was actually the one that originally recruited me to Router Gods, and I kind of credit my time with that study group for getting my IE. So that's a huge influence.
Catherine's great. She's been on the show a few times. Yeah, she's fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. She's amazing. And then Fish is like a mentor to me. So I always benefit from her wisdom. Like, you can't go wrong with just sitting down and talking to her.
Nice. And this may be the last one. What out there, if you could point at one resource on the internet, which one's invaluable? Which is the one that they can pry from your cold dead hands? That's out there.
Resource.
Yeah, like
but guardrails around this? What kind of resource are we talking about?
I'm just talking about I'm talking about information resource. Like where do you go when you Google is not a fair answer. We got to actually go one step further beyond Google.
Question. Router Gods has been the best community that I've been a member of. Having said that, I'm not in the network collective Slack. I actually had to put very tight rails around my communities because I found that I was spending all of my time teaching or talking to people.
Fair enough. I won't be offended. It's okay that you're not in the network collective Slack, although you really should be. But yeah, I'm kidding, man. I'm kidding, man.
I split my time. I have to walk away to get any work done is the problem. But yeah, so I would just have to go with that. That is the best group that I've been a member of for as long as I have. And it's just full with so many people that you wouldn't, like Nick is over there. Catherine is there. You would be surprised by the amount of people. Fish is in there. There's a lot of people in there that you probably already know from the community that are already in there and teaching and helping each other.
I like a lot of people from Router Gods. I've actually held off on joining for the same reason why you're not in the Network Collective Slack. There's just only so much time and only so many places. And so like I know tons of great people that are there. So it's another great place that's out there. There's one more question here from the crew that are watching. How do you manage the middle of your career? So he says knock at the beginning, but how do you do that to CPOC, right? And I think this is a really common question. Like it's easy to get stuck in a knock position. It's easy to get stuck into like a help desk type position. Like how did you navigate that?
That's absolutely true. So I started on the NMCI, which is the Navy Marine Corps intranet. That was my starting, my first job after I met my CCNA. And I got into I don't know when you started, Tony, but I started networking when I was almost 30. It was right after I had my first daughter. And I started in a knock, right? And I spent a year in the knock just doing like tickets and stuff and maintenances. And I got my NP within, I think after the first year, within first and second year or whatever. And I got promoted there and promoted again. Eventually I was senior level engineer, which of course meant different things on the NMCI, because the NMCI is incredibly, and I don't know how it is now, but it was, and I'm sure it still is, being a military network, is incredibly regimented, right? There's no cowboy. You're not, at the level of a knock, you're not engineering full solutions or anything like that, right? So senior engineer means something different when you're in a knock than when you're an architect or whatever you call it. But honestly, I stumbled into build a network. I guess all I can say is build a network of people. And this is great. Community is great for that, right? Because a friend of mine was working at the company, and I think it was Glassdoor, back when Glassdoor was relevant, that like suggested, like, hey, your friend's company has a job opening, and it was for a network engineer position. And I was ready to move up. I was tired of, doing knock level work. And so I interviewed, and they flew me out. It was in rural Idaho. They flew me out for an interview and whatnot. And so my next step in my career was as like an enterprise level engineer, as not a junior engineer. I guess we didn't really have like junior, senior, whatever. It was just network. There was four of us, including the manager. There was four of us for this global company. So there was no stratification there, right? So I guess the point I would make is if you are stuck at a knock level, focus on learning. Obviously, you're never going to get out of a knock position if you can't interview for an engineer level position. That's number one. And two is work on your network, right? There's jobs open everywhere that are not well advertised or whatever. And just knowing people is the one thing you could do to improve your career outside of go get your CCIE or some technical certification. Working on your true human network, man, it is probably the best thing you can do. So I would say human networking, learning, improving, more certifications, obviously, just experience, right? I don't know. You guys might have something to add to that. I know the question was for me, but
I think that's a great answer. I think that really comes down to you don't know what you don't know, and so the human network is really what does it, right? There's two purposes to it. One, you start building it for the purpose of having people to bounce things off of when you don't know, but it's also there as an inspiration. Like I talked about that earlier in the show, the idea that like I started following people because they were doing things that I aspired to do myself. And so just hearing them talk and being in their presence and like a conference really sparked that for me. The idea that just being around people who are doing what you're doing, but doing it at a higher level than you, will show you what you need to know and what you need to do to get there. And so that human network is a huge deal because it's multifaceted. It's not just about leeching off of people. You can get inspiration never having had a conversation with somebody, but even better if you can engage in conversation with them. I mean, that's a huge reason why I believe in community. Like that's because of the fact that it was the single most influential thing on my career. So I couldn't have answered it better myself. So I'll say well done. Tony, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No. I mean, I'll just be an echo chamber here. I mean, I am where I am. I'm with the company that I'm with now because someone I was in community college with said, "Hey, Tony, didn't you like do the Cisco class in community college? I was like, yeah. They're like, well, my company's looking for a networking person. And I was like, oh, well, okay. All right. And they're like, well, send me your resume. And I was like, okay. And, you know, it went very quick, but I got hired. And, you know, I think I did well in the interview and everything. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, a shoo-in, but yeah, because I had that community of people that knew sort of what my interests were and what my strengths were, when they needed something, you know, they reached back to who was the first person they thought of that had that strength. And, you know, we were all kind of junior at the time, but that was me. And I came in, and I'm still with the same company. It's kicked ass every day. All right.
My last 3 jobs have all been from people that I know. Yeah. It's just the way that it works. Yep.
And I want to add, Jordan and Tony, because I think you both touched on it a little bit. The reason I said also work on your learning and work on your certifications and everything is because I feel like the human networking can get you in front of the right people, right? But ultimately, it's not leeching, because you still need to perform. You still need to know. You still need to pass the interview, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So don't neglect either of those things, right? But a lot of people ignore that relationship building, that human networking, in favor of chasing the next cert, and it's a mistake, I think.
I think this is my favorite question, and we're definitely going to end on this one. I know I said that the past couple times. So who would win an arm wrestling match? Peter Lepkov or Nick Russo? And he said, LOL, just kidding. I'm not kidding. I want to know who will win in an arm wrestling match.
Can we set that up, you think?
I don't know. I mean, we
can probably live stream it.
I don't know Peter Lepkov, but I don't know. My money might be on Nick on that one. I just don't know Peter's.
I know of Peter. I know his work. But I know Nick, and my money would be on Nick. So that's just where it's going. So I think this is a good place to. I think this is a good place to wrap it up. Yeah, Tim, thanks so much for coming on. So if you're watching, if you're listening, what you need to do right now is you need to go to YouTube, and you need to go search for Carpe Diem VPN, and you need to subscribe. And you know, hit the bell so you're notified, and then you can head on over to Network Collective and do the same thing, or you can do it in reverse order. I don't really care. You pick it; it's fine. But you definitely need to do that, because I'm sure there's lots of great. Well, I know there's lots of great content there. I've seen a couple of videos, so definitely go check that out. If you like this, obviously this is a new thing, but if you didn't know, we run a podcast, right? So you go to networkcollective.com and check out all the places you can find us. And so we're just about everywhere now, since we're doing video and audio and whatever. I mean, Twitch, YouTube, or iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify. The amount of services that are in my bookmarks of things I have to manage and get stuff out to when it happens is there. We're also on social media. So at Net Collective PC, you can search for Network Collective on Facebook or LinkedIn. If you haven't noticed, our social media tags, our handles on Twitter have been up the entire time. So go follow us. We'd love to talk with you and chat about it. So yeah, anyway, thanks again, Tim. This was an absolutely fantastic session. We're going to be doing this often. So, you know, for what we're doing, like, this is a lot of fun. I love the community interaction component of it. Yet again, for those who stuck around and watched, love you guys. It's really, really fun to get real-time feedback about the stuff that's going on. And I have to stop myself from, like, focusing too much on the funny comments and the things that are going on in chat, and actually hold the conversation going. So it's great. But I think from here, I think that's it. So we will everyone have a good night, and we will see you. I mean, it's Thanksgiving week here in the U.S.
Jordan, one second.
We have business. We have business.
Last week we did a stream, and I did a trivia question out there, and I asked a trivia question, and I think only one person got it right.
Well, hold on.
My trivia question. That's right.
There were a bunch of people. There were a bunch of people who answered in the stream and did not follow the instructions about where they needed to go. One person followed the instructions. Now, here's the miracle, though. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah. So the question was, just to recap, the question was, when we did the last stream last week, I had my birthday the day before. So on the sake of celebrating my birthday, I said, can anyone guess how old I just turned. And only one person followed the instructions correctly. That person was Mr. Chris Cummings. Everybody, hit the applause button, Jordan.
I don't have it yet. I need to get sound effects.
All right, Chris Cummings. Chris Cummings was right. I turned 36 on November 17th.
So one
now you have
person
15%
guessed.
of my password. So all you hackers out there are going to get me.
So one person guessed, and they got the exact right answer. This sounds like an inside job
Chris
to me.
did it he didn't even brute force it or anything. He just put it out there perfectly. But you know what? He might have did some OSINT, some open source intelligence, and looked back at the past few years on this day to see if I announced how old I turned. I don't know what he did. But anyhow, Chris, your reward is I'm going to sponsor a Network Collective t-shirt coming to you. We will follow up with you on what size you prefer, and we will send that your way.
Nice.
I wanted screen share. I wanted to go ahead.
Send it to me, and I'll get it up on the screen. It'll take me 2 seconds. Shoot it to me in Slack. Whatever you wanted to put up on the screen.
Oh, okay. So, yep. I'm gonna send something over to Jordan, and what we're gonna put on the screen is this is gonna be our trivia question for the Tim episode.
The Tim episode.
The Tim episode.
I didn't have my birthday was 2 weeks ago, so you can't do this.
Okay.
You can't do
this I'm sending to you, Jordan.
Okay.
You're very welcome, Chris. Thanks for playing with us. So this is.
It's going to take me a second.
If you guys are there,
you got to stall.
All right.
You got to stall for just 2 more minutes or 2 more seconds.
Yeah, I can do that. So this next one is going to be an image. We're going to show you an image. Okay, this is something what I like to call router porn. This is a router.
I can't.
Yeah, this is a router. This is a router with its lid off, so you get to see all of the naked components inside. All right, and I say router, but what I really mean is a networking device. Can you name this networking device without seeing the front, back, or side labels by just looking at the components inside?
All right.
So that's what this one's going to be. I got a couple of these queued up. So we're going to do just one this week, and we'll see what we can do next week.
I'm still getting connected here. This is I was unprepared. Right. So so just for those who are watching, this is completely my fault, only because of the fact that we wanted to get screen sharing going in this, and it's been less than cooperative. This tool we're using is phenomenal in so many different ways. The screen sharing is not built in, and because of that, we're struggling to get things up.
So Tim, I'm very curious if you're gonna be able to name this one or not. Jordan, if you can't get it, what we'll do is we'll put it out on the Network Collective Twitter account, and we'll let people take a stab at it there if they can't get it. Where's the naked device? I'm hoping it's coming, but I wonder if Tim, if he can get it up, if you'll be able to recognize it. I have this habit, anytime a piece of networking equipment comes into our office, I want to take the lid off right away and snap a couple of pictures of what's inside. And actually, you can find some very cool things. So after this week, when we go over this next week, I'm going to show everyone something that they didn't know existed with this particular device, and something that is super, super cool.
All right, so I'm pulling it up.
So what do you think, Jordan? Oh, okay.
Maybe. It's thinking about it. No, we're going to put it on Twitter. I don't want to keep it. I don't want to keep it going. So we'll put it on Twitter. And someone
we'll put it on Twitter.
Yeah.
This is a naked box, so everyone needs to go follow Network Collective PC on Twitter.
Net Collective PC.
And,
yep.
Net Collective PC on Twitter, and we'll post this. And anyone can guess any number of guesses, and first person to get it right, or the first 2 people to get it right, if we have 2 winners, we'll announce it next week, and we'll give a prize and a shout out. So it's definitely going to be cool.
All right. It's not safe for work. That's the comment. It's not safe for work. I promise you, it's safe for work. It's what we do every day at work. Yeah. Anyway. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much again. And we'll see you next time. All right.
Take care.